This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. Hello, Amplify You family. Michelle Abraham, your host here today with an Ask the Expert interview. Today, I'm really excited to bring you someone that I've worked with over the last few years, and his name is Dan Moore. So Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm always good.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm glad that you're able to jump in here with us. It looks very nice where you are right now today.
Well, yeah. It's always good here too. I'm not sure how that is.
That's awesome. You live in Tennessee, right?
Nashville.
Awesome.
Country music capital of the world.
Oh, I've always wanted to go to Nashville. I can't wait to actually visit it. I'm a huge country music fan, so I'm going to be excited to get there and check it out.
I actually listen to 80s music, so I rarely hear country music unless I'm downtown or in the airport or in any establishment.
That's awesome. So Amplify You family, let me tell you a little bit about Dan. So Dan and his wife, Rachel, they have a business where they've got a few different amazing things that are happening, but they're able to generate a full-time revenue from their blog, podcasts, and teaching courses. And I connected with Dan through the PodcastersKit that he does. And it's a really cool idea that you've done here, Dan, where you've collected a whole bunch of podcasting experts, put them together. They give a gift and you do it as a giveaway or as a product that you sell in October of every year. So Dan, tell us a little bit about the Podcasters Kit to start off with.
Well, Podcasters Kit is volume 2 of our stack strategy for the year. And I must say that our overall goal is to work 4 months a year and make a full-time income. So that's what I'm working towards. And we're close. I would say we could do it now, but we'd have to eat ramen noodles some of the year. So the Podcasters Kit, being volume 2, is piggybacking off the success of another product that we have in June called BC Stack. And both of them, the concept behind them is, well, when we were traveling, we used to do these workshops all over the world. We did 8-hour workshops. And when we were in New Zealand, I remember talking about Gary Vaynerchuk, and many people in the room didn't know who that was. And for me, that was strange. I thought the internet was like the great equalizer. And, on Facebook and all these groups, like, how could you not know? Well, it dawned on me on the way home that not only did they not know some of our experts, but I really hadn't met many of their experts. So I thought, what if we made a product where we introduced our audience to their experts and their audience to our experts and vice versa? And then, we were doing, it was more than New Zealand. We were doing workshops everywhere. So the first year we decided, all right, we're going to take a product, a real live course training product from 65 people. And then we're all going to market the product to the world. And that was going to be, we called BC Stack. That was the concept. So then the buyer would get 65 courses about digital marketing. We did that for 5 years before I realized, if I did 2 of these a year, then we could probably have a relatively good stable income if I could do that every year. And so I was trying to figure out what would the other one be, because I am kind of a rolling the snowball kind of guy. I like all of my efforts yesterday to pay off tomorrow. So I knew that if we did like a medical product, like I didn't have the audience for that. And I thought, I don't want to develop an entire new audience. I want to give the existing audience an opportunity for something else. So being a podcaster, and at that time, I think we'd already had 200 episodes of our podcast, which was called Amplify Today. So I thought, all right, we'll do a podcasting one. There isn't a ton of courses out there about podcasting. So I made a few mistakes in my assumptions that it would be awesome. And my first mistake was, at the time, there were not 65 experts with courses on podcasts. So I had to make it 45, which it is now. It's 45 experts on podcasting. So that was undersight, number one. And then number two was, I thought it would be as big as BC Stack from an income standpoint. But my failure to understand exactly how BC Stack worked meant that I went into PodcastersKit with the idea that I could copy the formula. But part of that formula is, with BC Stack, I had 200 affiliates who had lists of bloggers, of people who blog, of vloggers, and some podcasters. But when I found 45 experts in podcasting, podcasters don't really have lists. They're just not good at it. And not because they're not good marketers, but because when you're listening to a podcast, you're often at the gym, or you're in the car, or you're mowing the lawn, and you don't have a computer in front of you to join a list. So it's a little bit more difficult. So the first year, volume-wise, was less than I expected because of those things that I didn't foresee. So we've overcome those challenges in doing other things to make PodcastersKit almost as big as BC Stack at this point, and hoping to make it bigger next year. But that's the idea. The buyers get 45 products about podcasting. Mm-hmm. The people who make the products get a list of very targeted people who would like to learn about podcasting. And everyone who promotes, including the affiliates, make the money that comes from the buyers. So it's like a win-win-win kind of a product.
Yeah, I love the idea of the product. And I'm glad we're discussing this, because I think it's a really brilliant business strategy, because you're connecting with so many other people in the space who have products, who have services, and that allows you to build a lot of relationships, which we're all about relationship building over here. So I think that's a really great way to build relationships. And so if people are thinking at home, thinking I'm brand new to the parenting space, how do I get into the parenting space, or connecting with other experts that have something of value like this, I think is such a cool concept. Would you recommend this as a way for someone to kind of start getting some relationships in an industry?
I would recommend a similar strategy, but maybe not this if you're just getting started, because building a product like the Stack, there's a learning curve. Mm-hmm. I mean, pretty steep learning curve. There's a lot of parts involved. But if you're just getting involved and you're interested in creating those kinds of relationships, I am a huge fan of the roundup. Mm-hmm. And a roundup is a very simple concept, especially in the parenting space, because Rachel, my wife, she writes for mothers.
That's right.
So twice a year we do a roundup on Finding Joy, and that is, I reach out to people that I want to know in the space. Now, I don't reach out randomly, because prior to having decided to do the roundup, I've already created what I call a universe spreadsheet. So I've gone through Amazon, I've looked for every book on parenting, and I've put the author's name on the spreadsheet as authors on parenting. And then I go to LinkedIn and I look for everybody who says they're an expert on parenting. And then I go to Twitter and I find the people who are the experts, and then Facebook and YouTube. And, I scour the earth basically for all of the people who say that they're experts in my niche, because I know that if an audience member is interested in parenting, they probably have bought parenting books. So they probably have some of these people on the shelf, or they've watched a Netflix story on parenting. So I've included those people as well. So when it comes time for the roundup, my goal is, okay, and you can find this on findingjoy.net, but how would you describe motherhood, in like 3 sentences? So I reached out to the editor of Good Housekeeping magazine, and it's not very difficult to say yes to this when I say, hey, would you like to be part of this roundup and tell us what, in your words, what motherhood is? And in return, I'm going to include you in this blog post. I'm going to include your name, your website, your link, your bio, all that stuff about you. But this quote that's going to get shared by, a million people, it seems like. And that is a really simple way to approach someone if you're a beginner. Say, hey, I'm writing this thing. I'd like to feature you. Would you like to just tell me, a paragraph about, what is your definition of this, or what is your answer to this, or, what do you think about COVID as a parent? And people will answer you. And now all of a sudden you've got an email relationship with someone where you've asked somebody, they said yes, you put them in, you sent them a link, it has their nice picture, it has their link, you've given them exposure, it has begun. Now, the second step could easily be maybe even a smaller version of the stack. And some people just call them giveaways. And that is where you just ask some people, hey, do you have a product you'd like to put in this? And we'll give it to my audience. And then you could work your way up. But I would say starting with something like PodcastersKit or the stack is difficult for me to recommend because the shopping cart, it's affiliate software. It's
like a lot of moving pieces.
It's a lot of moving pieces. So for me, that's a tough way to go unless you're just really gung-ho.
Yeah, I love the idea of the roundup post though, because it gives you that warm introduction. You're building a relationship that you can reach back out for something later. And that's one of the things that I love about podcasting is that you could probably do something similar in podcasting and get a whole bunch of people reach out. I know actually, as someone I know, we reached out to 25 podcasters and got a quote on like what their thoughts were on podcasting. Now she uses that as an opt-in, which I think that's a brilliant idea. I could see that being used in in an interview or like in a podcast episode too. Actually, my wheels were spinning as you were talking. I was like, hey, that's a good idea.
So a couple of the podcasters that have asked me, like, how do we start? One of them was in the health field. And I forget what his niche is. It's kind of specific in the health field. Mm-hmm. So I said, are there any conferences for this particular thing? And he's like, yeah, there's like 5 conferences a year. And I'm like, well, why don't you go to the conference website and then find all of the speakers and make them your guests, and then tell the guy that's running the conference that you're going to interview all the speakers and see if he'll promote your podcast. And, it's worked. So it worked every time I've suggested to someone.
That's great.
That works great. So if you're looking to get started, I mean, that's an easy way to get started.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's really cool. So Dan, you have a podcast as well. Can you tell us a bit about your podcast?
Yeah, we did a podcast called Amplify Today. We had 300 episodes, Rachel and I killed it, even though Rachel liked it. And I killed it because I started it because I thought we needed to start a podcast. Like that was the depth of the reason. There was no real heart in it. And while it got really good, I mean, we got ranked pretty high. We had a lot of downloads. We had a lot of fans. It was a popular culture news podcast. And I totally got bogged down. And this is something sometimes you get bogged down, but I got bogged down with the idea that how do I promote the episode about Ello, this social media website that came and went like 4 years ago? How do I promote that 2 years from now when it's gone? How, like no one's ever gone back and watched the daily news from last night, the 6 o'clock. Nobody watches last week's news, right? Yeah. So I got stuck in this. I just couldn't see. The idea of rolling the snowball and the business getting bigger. I'm like, how do I promote these old episodes about things that don't exist? So we quit it. And then PodcastersKit was getting bigger and BC Stack was getting a little bigger. And I had a little bit of free time. And there was something I grew up with that I really, really loved. And it didn't exist for my kids. And that was this guy named Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey was a radio newsman, maybe 40 or 50 years doing the news. And he had this story, and he was syndicated on more stations than any other newscaster. And his show was 7 minutes, I think. And he had a segment called the rest of the story, where he would tell a story about someone famous, but he wouldn't tell you who it was till the end of the story. So you'd hear this unbelievable tale. And then at the end, he would tell you, and that was President John F. Kennedy. And now you know the rest of the story. So I loved it. Like, if it was on, I didn't care if I was late for a meeting. I was not getting out of the car until that story. So I wanted to recreate that. I wanted to be Paul Harvey. So while I don't have a podcast where it tells you who it was at the end, I try to give you that exact same feeling as you're listening to it, of all these, holy crap, I had no idea those two people were involved together. I had no idea that Paul Harvey was at the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Like I try to find these unbelievable moments where you leave it and go, holy crap, I had no idea that Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was the reason that we say the alphabet the way we do.
How do you come up with these episodes? Like, where do you look? It's not something you can just Google, right?
None of it you can Google.
No.
And the part of the show is that as I begin it, I would tell you that none of these stories have ever been told before. And that's because, I do some crazy research. So far, I've only been able to do one a month. It's so much research.
Right.
But everything that every episode we've done is something that I've always been interested in my life. Like right now, I'm working on an episode about apartheid in South Africa. And for me, for my generation, that was a big story in the 80s. There was always talk about how the white government was oppressing the blacks in South Africa. And then Nelson Mandela and all this other stuff. Well, I don't know if you know this, but there's this guy named Rodriguez. And he was an American musician. 1971, he put out an album. That album didn't go anywhere. Nobody cared about it. So he quit music and started working in construction in Detroit. But somebody took that album to South Africa and it went viral.
Wow.
People bootlegged it left and right. And he became more popular than Elvis and the Beatles.
Wow.
Meet anyone from South Africa who lived there in the 80s and ask about Rodriguez, they will know exactly who that is. They will know how much, just like Bruce Springsteen or U2 or Elvis means to us. And he did not know it until 1996, when two reporters decided they're going to find out whatever happened to this Rodriguez guy who means so much to South Africans. And he was living in squalor in Detroit, and they convinced him to come to South Africa. And he did 5 sold-out shows in front of 20,000 people, had no idea that he was who he was.
That's crazy.
So, this happened during apartheid, at the same time that Paul Simon went there to record Graceland against everyone's wishes that he would go to South Africa. So I'm putting that story together about how the music inside of South Africa helped break down the culture of apartheid. But it's all just the stuff that I've always wanted to know. Like even this last month was the story behind a Charlie Brown Christmas. How did they find Kuralt? Like, where did that all come from? So for me, let me tell you something about podcasting. My podcast is not like yours. Like, I don't interview. And so I used to watch all these shows about how do you grow as a podcaster, and they're all it's talking about your guests and how do you get your guests to promote. And I'm like, man, I'm not doing that. I'm telling these stories. And am I going to tell stories until, the end of the earth and 11 people are going to listen to them because I don't do what they do.
Right.
But what I have found is that not every path that's paved with gold is the only path to success. Sometimes you have to create your own. And so I have done that with the podcast. I have decided, I have broken apart every single episode, and I've made a list of, there's probably 100 references in every episode to a person, a place, or a thing. And I have found those people, and I've told them about the episode. And I did an episode where Margaret and H.A. Ray, who wrote Curious George, they were in Paris when Hitler was arriving, and they had to flee Paris. And he built bicycles, and they rode from Paris to Spain on bicycles with the Curious George manuscript. It was the only thing they had. And they went to Brazil, and then they finally made it to New York City and published that book. Well, I found an audience in all of the Holocaust museums, and they have been promoting it like crazy.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Just because it's popular culture and it's keeping it interested in what went on with the Holocaust, so people don't forget. So every episode, I've been able to find someone who has a vested interest in the success of the episode to help me promote it. And unlike every guru who tells you how to grow a podcast, there's another way.
I love that way. Yeah, that's so interesting. And as we're moving more into like that what we teach a lot about is transformational podcasting, so that you're inspiring the listener to like make a transformation and make a change and do something with their life. I love that, because that you've found a different way of connecting with people that these stories will really matter to. And so I'm looking on Podomatic right now as we're talking, and like I've seen a huge jump in your consumption of your episodes. Do you think that's directly related to what you just said, that strategy?
It is 100% related to that strategy. Mm-hmm. I use a service called Talkwalker, and I tell Talkwalker all of the keywords that I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. For instance, with Charlie Brown podcast, right now, I want to know every single person on the planet that mentions a Charlie Brown Christmas. So the moment that happens, if it's on Twitter, they get a tweet about, hey, did you hear the story behind a Charlie Brown Christmas? And here's the link to the podcast.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So if it's a blog, there's a comment, but I need to find people who have a vested interest in the subject. Mm-hmm. For me, that's basically the target market, right?
Right.
And my target market in my head is seniors. Mm-hmm. I think seniors used to listen to radio. They like radio stories. I'm kind of a slower traditional storyteller. It's not animated. It's not lots of people joking and laughing. It's pretty much just a story. And I think that they resonate with that. So I've been getting senior senators to play them at lunch. Cool. Because it's old stories.
Things they can relate to. Yeah,
pretty much everything in the 20th century. In fact, every story ends in the 20th century. And it's called Tracing the Path, because I take something in the 20th century and I, even with the Charlie Brown Christmas, I connect it to Johannes Gutenberg and the printing press, 14. Cool. So, they like it. So I just have to find them. And if they're talking about something that I've got a podcast on, I let them know that they can listen to the episode.
I think that's a unique way of looking at, reaching out to different kind of audience for your podcast. Oh, yeah. So it's cool.
At least 200 people a day that are just cold, just because they've mentioned something, really.
Yeah. Wow. And so this platform reaches out for you on behalf, or you're actually reaching out to all of these people?
See, here's the learning curve of our business. Talkwalker helps me find them. Right. And then eClencher helps me contact them. And then Zapier helps me connect the two. There's a learning curve for everything that we do when you get to the point where you're making a full-time income. So while everything seems simple, I got to tell you, there's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. But it seems like you've created with BC Stack and PodcastersKit, you've really created some systems now that you're able to now, like you mentioned, have a goal of working 4 months a year. I think that's really awesome. That's what a lot of people are, wanting to do in their life: work less, spend more time living. Do you attribute some of that to systems?
I wish that I could say that.
You kind of created the systems, though, after all the trial and error, though, right? Are you like me and not a systems person?
I am definitely a systems person, but I'm not very good at writing down what the system was the last time.
Right.
So that this time, it takes me about 3 times for each project for me to have written it down, filled in the blanks, and have a good template from which I can actually hire a VA or something. Like here's the steps. But it really takes me 3 times because I just suck at it. I'm good at making things happen, but then recording them, not so good.
Yeah, can totally relate. Well, it's interesting because you're also a fellow category director of Podcast Magazine. You write as the professional podcaster category and gadgets and gizmos, and you have a podcast. You had another successful podcast. But you guys spend a lot of your time, and a large amount of your revenue comes from a blog. So I would love to know, you spend so much time in the podcasting space. Blogging is something that, a lot of podcasters or people who want to podcast think that was, the yesterday's big thing was blogging, but it's very much still alive, especially in your guys' family. So can you share with us a little bit about the blog?
So findingjoy.net has 800,000 fans on Facebook and then another 200,000 on the other platforms. And really what it boils down to is Rachel's ability to encapsulate her thoughts and put them on paper in a way that makes you say, that is exactly what I was thinking. That is exactly how I feel. That strength that she has has led to, some of her quotes get shared 500,000 times, 500,000 shares, 1 million shares. She has a goal of 1,000 likes in the first hour for all of her stuff. That's kind of her whole goal, to tell her whether or not it was good or not. It led to a Penguin Random House book deal. It led to the Today Show. But it's not the blog. It's the ability to connect and encapsulate what she's feeling as a mom, because she writes about motherhood, but not really. She really writes about the mom, the woman who is the mom, and who is struggling to be more than a mom, to be herself, to be an entrepreneur, to be a wife, to be somebody who does crafts, or like something outside of motherhood. So she really talks to that part of a woman, and she resonates with people with kids because they have the same kinds of struggles, stresses, those kinds of issues, and because she has this really keen ability to connect with them at that level, that it doesn't really matter whether she's on the Today Show or it's a quote or it's a blog, or it's the book. They want to share it with their sister, their mother, their friend who's a mother, and that's what makes the business run. And the moment that she loses that ability, I think, is the moment that business goes away. But I think that's exactly the same thing as Disney and JCPenney and Blockbuster. Once Blockbuster no longer understood the pulse of their consumer, they lost. And the pulse of the consumer was, and still is, we're trying to go as digital as possible. We love the movies, but we love the convenience of the movies. Right. While Blockbuster was like, hey, we're going to be the first people to bring movies to your neighborhood. They didn't realize that the rest of us were waiting for them to come to our home. So whether you blog or podcast or vlog or whatever it is, if that is a piece, like that's not a piece for me, right? I do talk about entrepreneurship and I do talk about building the business. But as you can hear on this call, it's my voice, and some people probably recognize that I'm okay with my failures and weaknesses and strengths. I still make a full-time income, but, and I think it's easy for most people to resonate because I am not a guru who says all you need is ClickFunnels and you can make $1 billion. Like this is not the case. ClickFunnels is a great tool, but you need a lot more.
You need a whole lot of other things involved.
Yeah, you need a lot more to it. But the idea that you would want to take something I said and then share it with your friends is not the same as what Rachel does. So different business models for different things. And it really takes a keen understanding of your own business model. What is it that truly drives the revenue? Because that's not only your key to success, but it's also your biggest risk. Like my parents run Front Porch Ideas. They make 6 figures on Google AdSense. Their entire business is built on Google AdSense. But if the search engine stopped delivering traffic, it's over. So they know their biggest strength is the search engines, their biggest weakness is the search engines. So you just really have to know your business, and blogging could be great if you can encapsulate things and you love to write. It is a great platform.
That's awesome. And for those of you guys who want to check out Rachel's blog is findingjoy.net. So make sure you check it out there. Yeah. And so what do you think the biggest risk is for podcasters?
Well, everybody has their own business risk, right? Internal business risk, as my neighbor decides to mow his lawn at this very second.
It's okay. I can hear. It's all good.
The biggest risk for podcasters is your own personal revenue source. If you need podcasting to pay your bills, I don't think you'll make it. I think you need to find another source of income. And then to give you the freedom to create really good shows. And from those shows will come your audience and the money. But if you're chasing the money on day one, you're going to burn out on podcasting. As many, many people do. They get to like 7 episodes and they see, 50 downloads and they realize this is too hard. So I think your biggest risk is your ability to continue. Like, can you dedicate the time? Can you focus on being a good show? Or are you thinking this is just going to be another way to make revenue quickly? In which case, I think it's not quick. It can be effective. It can be fantastic, but it's most likely not going to be on day one.
That's right.
So there needs to be something else in the background while you build this stream.
Yeah, it's a long-term game. It's like that snowball. Once that snowball starts getting some momentum, it gets going good. But that usually doesn't happen on day one. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for joining us today. I've learned so much about your business and your ideas, and I've really appreciated you sharing your vulnerability with us too, of like, the trials and tribulations of an entrepreneur. I think sometimes are overlooked, and people have a nice glossy, sunshines and butterflies view of things. And it's nice to hear some realistic, things happen, things are good, things are not good. And it's always like a trial and error, and you get going on this snowball. Back to the snowball again. I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability with us today. And I want to also, for our podcasters out there, guys, if you are interested in getting started podcasting, Dan, is there a way for them to get on a wait list for next year for Podcasters Kit? Because this is a product, guys, is incredible. Like, anything you want to know about podcasting is in that kit. You don't need to buy anything else, and it's so inexpensive. It's not even funny.
Yeah, it's podcasterskit.com.
Perfect.
And then we provide, that's pretty much the only thing we sell. We do sell a workshop. We do put on an 8-hour workshop, but a couple times a year. But otherwise, if you get on the list, we'll just tell you cool podcasting stuff until Podcasters Kit comes out. Hopefully that's everything you'll ever need.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And so if you go to podcasterskit.com, you can get on the wait list so that when it does come out, you've got access to it, guys, because it only goes on sale for like 3 days. And if you miss it, you miss it. Yeah, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So then, and Dan only does this once a year. That's why it's so amazing, right? Yeah. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
So yeah, if you missed it, you're host. Like, normally we schedule our vacation for the week after these events. So we have a little patience for the people who say, I just forgot. I'm like, well, I'm on vacation. It's too bad.
Sorry, can't let you in. You missed it. Wait till next year. So no, that's awesome. And I highly recommend it. And if you're listening and you're thinking about podcasting, guys, you don't need to buy anything else. Just buy the kit, and you've got so much great content in there. So many great templates, tools, like trainings are free. Our podcasters, Podcasters Blueprint live program is in there too. Like, so many great things. So reach out and get on the list so that you don't miss it for next year.
Rock on.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here with us today. I will look forward to chatting with you again. And Amplify You family, go out there. Your uniqueness is your genius. Amplify into the world is ours. Go out there and be great. And we'll see you again next week.
Woo.